Well, hello, friends. Hope you're having a great Monday so far. This is going to be our last video presentation for Philosophy 1900, and we're talking about Neil Postman's book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, basically focusing on chapters 9, 10, and 11, and answering three questions about the effect of telegraphy and photography that's had on the American culture the last several decades. And we basically use the insights of Aldous Huxley and his warning to society. And so our first question is this: to what degree do you share Postman's convictions regarding the use of television in those realms? Well, through reading Neil Postman's book, he's talking about how that television today, or media, is basically the greatest command center of epistemology. It's having the greatest influence on the minds, the thought process. And I hold very firm to what Postman is talking about, because the media today, as you watch daily, wherever that might be, Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC, the list goes on. They have different perspectives, and often these perspectives are not very objective. There's always a twist to the story to basically accelerate ratings, and they often attack the young culture in general because the young culture can sometimes be very naive about their thinking. They don't use a lot of logic or rationale. So you could say that Postman is saying that a lot of times people who are young, and even some my parents' age or grandparents' age, are very swayed to believe anything they hear. For the fact is, when you work all day and you come home, you're not very discerning about what's on the TV, and you want to believe anything about possibly politics, religion, education, the weather. And so we often have a very gullible mindset. And Postman and Huxley are very adamant about discussing this. In fact, Huxley says that the greatest danger today is not someone that comes off evil or nefarious, but someone that has a very pleasant appearance. Supposedly, they have a smile. I love how the scriptures say that the enemy comes as an angel of light. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy, to deceive. Well, that's like television. A lot of times, people from the media or politicians, they come with great ideas, you would say, but they're actually trying to hurt you or control you. And that goes to my second question, where you see it asks, why does Postman feel that we should emphasize Huxley rather than Orwell in trying to understand the plight of American culture? See, Orwell is kind of saying that we should still believe that a lot of American culture understands the media, that they can discern. But Huxley disagrees. He says that the great proportion of society today in America has lost the academic mindset. They don't use their minds, and that's why whenever they see an education on TV or a movie or a YouTube video, they look for entertainment. They don't look to grow the mind, to grow the logic, you might say. And Orwell still thinks that a lot of America can have a mindset. And I somewhat agree with Orwell that I believe there's still great potential that America can get back to their old ways, because look at people like Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, great scholars, great scientists. They have wonderful minds, and many in the 19th centuries, even the 20th century, still have wonderful minds. But today, in the 21st century, you see so many stats, many articles that show that Americans today are getting less and less understandable about what is right and what is wrong. And J.P. Moore, in his book, Love Your God All Your Mind, talks about this in depth, about the empty self. And that goes to my third question today, where it asks, how should J.P. Moreland's insights with respect to the empty self be applied to these issues, and what should be the role of the church in attempting to reverse the cultural realities lamented by Postman? Well, the empty self is basically you don't use your mind. You're very tempted to believe anything you want to hear. And that's just paraphrasing what Moreland was saying. Or you might just don't understand what TV is saying. And it goes to the church today that a lot of time we come to church, we get very excited about how the preacher is preaching. He has a very exciting, he has a wonderful voice. He's a great orator, you could say. But many times we neglect to ask, is it doctrinally based? Is it helping our minds grow? Can we go out to the world and get in great debates with people who might challenge us about the inerrancy of the gospel? They might ask an atheist, how can you prove the existence of Christ? What is the scientific evidence of Christ's existence? They'll ask that. And sadly, we see many times that Christians are very undiscerned. They cannot give an answer. I've said it all this year on these videos that we must heed by 1 Peter 3:15 to always be ready to give an answer at any given accord. Postman is basically lamenting about how the church today, especially a lot of these thriving mega churches, tend to have a very small logic about their thinking. They're so worried about growing numbers, become the greatest church in America or in the world. But they're not really concerned about apologetics, growing the mind, helping us engage and give the evidence. And that goes along with the empty self that Moreland was talking about in his book. How the empty self is basically empty. You don't understand things. You don't want to. There's no scholarly intake upon your studies. You're not being diligent about researching things to make sure that the gospel is historically reliable, that it's authentic. And basically, to sum up the whole video here, I believe that Huxley, Postman, and Moreland is saying that the church must awake and realize these issues. Because if we're going to reverse the trend, the church must be first in line and take a stand to engage their minds for the sake of the gospel. I love how my professor Scott Henderson said in the lecture today that if we take these tools that Huxley, Moreland, and Postman give us to grow our logic, become rational thinkers, to not believe everything we hear from the world, and not be drawn to the empty self, we will understand that the mind can be used for great things, and yes, a valuable tool for the sake of the gospel. I love you all so much. I've enjoyed this class this year, and may God bless you in your future studies. Keep the focus on Christ always, and God bless.